Well, greetings once again. It is the next day, and what is this, part 7? Part 7, and I haven't even got the car out of the carport. It's a pitiful situation, isn't it? Oh, my goodness. Anyway, Brother Hiscock, one of our good subscribers, said, look, I like you working on the car and all, but don't forget, you keep working on electronics. Well, let me re-explain what's going on here so everybody knows what's happening. I want the car out of the carport and into the garage so I can work on it in there, out of the severe Arkansas heat, which will be coming even worse than we had. We just got through this latest heat wave. It's cooled down a little bit, but it's still pretty warm. But it's going to be really blistering hot in the next month or so, and I don't want to be out here doing this, so I got to get this thing out of here. And as soon as I get it out, and as soon as I get it parked in the garage and get the garage door shut, then we'll go back and work on the jukebox. And I'm just as much anxious to get back to the jukebox as you are. But I'm a patient person. I learned a long time ago, there will be no wine before it's time. All right, I got looking at this motor again before I change out these plug wires. By the way, one or two of you said, a high energy ignition system, HEI, forget all that. And, that's $100 and some that I can spend on other things for this car. This car runs fine. It ran fine for how many years with a point system? Am I concerned that it only gets 12 miles to a gallon? No. It's not going to be a steady driver. It'll be drive, I'm going to join the local Toad Suck. They call it the Toad Suck Antique Car Club. And I'm going to join that and go to their meetings and have fun with those guys. We have a lot in common. Why not, So I don't need all this new high-powered ignition system crap. Don't need it. I'm on a budget with this car, $2,500, which, by the way, in the next video, I hope to show you how we're doing on our budget. That $90 tire I had to buy the other day, that kind of threw me off a little bit. So I just unplugged the heat gauge wire from the manifold. Look at that right there. It's all burned. The wire's all burned. Let me zoom in here. It's all burned. It's been shorting out against something. I don't know what. And of course, this is our positive wire for our coil. That too is all burned up. So I'll be putting brand new wires on there and getting those hooked up. Then we'll go ahead and put our plug wires on. And while I was downtown this morning, messing around at Walmart, I went ahead and stopped off at O'Reilly Auto Parts and picked up a new rotor for it. Well, I'll tell you what, these things used to cost, 85 cents? You wouldn't believe what that thing costs now. Anyway, I decided, what the heck, I'll put a new rotor on it because I want to give this car the best chance it has of starting in a little while, I hope. And we're also I'm going to show you how to put your dielectric grease in your spark plug boots and why we do that. Why would we want to do that? And I'll show you the right way to do it. And we'll get some water in the radiator, and hopefully we'll be able to really get this thing fired up. I'd love it. I still got to put the heat riser pipe in the hole in the manifold where it goes. I have yet to check the brake fluid. I'm going to do that today too. It's just a million things you got to get ready before you can actually crank it up. I don't want to be backing this car up and then I can't stop it. Next thing you know, we're rolling out into the road here where I live, and some guy comes along and just side slams me. We don't want that. So let me go ahead and fix these wires first. Now, this temperature sensor that this thing plugs into, the wire is pretty fried right up to the edge of the rubber. And this rubber is hard as a rock, this insulator. But so what do we do with this thing? Well, you see it's pretty burnt. Well, we treat it just like we would some electronic radio or something we're working on. I'll probably take my knife and try to trim back about, maybe 1/8 of an inch of rubber. Get down to some bare wire, some good wire. And then splice on. I'll splice on some good wire and then run up some heat shrink all the way up here and then shrink it on down. It's the only thing I can do, really. I don't have one of these. And then, of course, this will have to be cleaned out real good. It's got a lot of rust and stuff in it. We'll make her work. Alright, that's how much of the boot I cut off. I'm going to slide it on back a little further. And we will cut this wire right about right there where the left side of that little black part is right now. Then we'll strip it back a little. I might go out just a little bit more to this area here, cut it, and then strip it back here. It all depends on what I find. You know, you look at this thing and you say, now how in the heck did that get burned like that? You know, it was good on one side and good on the other, and how did it get burned? Well, remember I told you in the very beginning that the guy who sold me the car said he had the engine rebuilt. It must have been in pretty bad shape for him to do that. Now by rebuilt, for all I know, they put a short block in it, you know, redid the heads and all that, and just put the engine back together with a new short block. And this wire was probably laying against something very, very hot in the old engine the way it was running, and once it got hot, it burned through the insulation, then shorted out against the intake manifold or some other piece of metal on the engine. But it doesn't matter. We're getting ready to fix her up now. I'm going to strip it back just a little further. Well, all the wires have now been repaired. This is our heat sensor here, and this is our positive side of the coil. I put a new connector on the end of that one, spread the legs apart. It was really bad shape. And then I repaired the negative side, cleaned it up. It looked real good, actually, better than it did, and I just put some heat shrink over it, shrunk it down. It's nice and solid now. We'll go ahead and hook those up in a minute. Now, old Umpa Jug Collector, he was having trouble remembering the firing order of this 390 Ford engine, and he kept coming up with 18436572. Well, the 18436572 was the let me get something just fell on the floor here, but the 18436572 was the old Chevy engines, you know, 283, 265, stuff like that, 327. And the Ford firing order is a lot different. In fact, the Ford pistons are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 as you stand in the front. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And how do you know that? Well, I'm going to show you on this particular engine. You don't see this on all engines. See right there? That's the number 1, right in the intake manifold. They just stamped it right in. Number 2 is in the next one, number 3, and then number 4 is way back here. I don't know if you can make out that number 4. See it? They made it real nice on this particular engine. I mostly worked on Chevy engines in my life, but this cylinder number is 1, 2, 3, 4, and over here again they're stamped on the intake manifold 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the firing order on this thing, I wrote it down so you all can maybe copy it if you're ever interested. It's let me see. I got a bunch of crap all over. It's 1542 6378. 154. This is the firing order for a 390 cubic inch Ford. Right there, okay? And instead of the 18436572. When I went to a Hamvention a couple of years ago, there was this guy running around with a t-shirt, and on the front of the t-shirt it said 18436572. It's a guy thing. Well, nobody really knew what that was until he met me. And I said, I know what that is. He said, what? I got it on YouTube, as a matter of fact, from the Hamvention a couple of years ago. So he was kind of neat. He thought that was neat. But of course, at my age, of course I would know what the firing order for a Chevy engine is. Anyway, let me go ahead and I might pop the lid right now on the brake cylinder. I mean the master cylinder, and see if we got any fluid in there. Let's do some of the easy stuff first. Doing this wire, leaning over this engine, this hot heat was really kind of hard. And I also cleaned the terminals, by the way, on the coil, the negative, positive, and down through the center. And I've installed the new rotor on the distributor. So let's open up our master cylinder, see what we have. Now, not all master cylinders are alike, so the lid, of course, comes off differently on some. The new modern types are plastic, and the lid's just held on by by rubber lips down here. But back in the old days, man, they used metal for this stuff, okay? And this one is held on by a clip that clips down underneath the bottom down there in a recessed spot. The hinge for it, the hinge is on top here. I'll unclip this one. The way this is done is you go ahead and take a bigger screwdriver than what I've got usually, and just kind of do that number, okay, and it comes right loose. Well, let's see what we got, if anything. Oh, well, that's always nice. Look it in there, boy. Looks good, huh? There is nothing in there. Well, that kind of sucks. I'm glad I checked it. Alright, I don't feel like, bleeding out the entire system, so I'm going to take some rags. Now the fluid, the brake fluid, was all the way up to the hole in the bottom where it enters the plungers down in the base of the thing. Let me see, let's go ahead and sop up as much of that nasty old stuff as we can. I'm just going to add about a half a reservoir. We can bleed it out later on. And let me clean it up a little bit more here. Alright, there's a little bit of rust down at the bottom, but other than that, she's pretty well cleaned out. I got her looking real good. And let's go ahead and dump some brake fluid in there. I've got to have at least some brake fluid on this thing. That ought to be about enough to get me over to the garage anyway. When I tore the wheels apart to get power wash them and everything, I didn't see any brake fluid anywhere. So, I don't know. Maybe the mice that ate my plug wires drank that stuff. I don't know. Alright, I just did a couple of more things. I filled the radiator up to the expansion tank to about right in this area right here. It gurgled on down through the engine. Actually didn't, it just gurgled into the radiator, I guess. It probably came over here and gurgled down. Unless the thermostat is open, it didn't get into the engine, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen with these things. And I'll talk to you about the thermostat later. I went in and hooked up the heat riser pipe. And we are ready to rock and roll, people. We're going to go in. You'll remember in the very beginning of when we first got the car, I took all the spark plugs out and I squirted some mystery oil in each one of the cylinders, all 8. Then I put the spark plugs back in by hand. Well, we want to blow that excess oil out now. We're to the point now where we're getting ready to put the plug wires on, put the spark plugs in there permanently. And we don't want to have any blown head gaskets as a result of way excessive oil in one of the cylinders. So I'm going to go in the car, I'm going to crank it over, and we're going to blow whatever oil is in there out. Will we have some oil come out and maybe shoot over here in the fender? Probably so, but who cares, I'm more interested in the safety of the motor than I am a little bit of oil in the paint that it can be washed off, all right? Well, let's get in the car and do that. All right, here we go. Uh-oh. I don't see anything. Yeah, it's going around. Let me turn off my wipers here. This is my wiper washers. It should be off. Try it again. Well, I don't see any oil at all. Let me see. No oil came out that I can see. Should have been some, but I guess I didn't squirt all that much in there to begin with. Both sides are like that. Well, and the engine was going over because I could see the old fan blade just going around and around and around and around. So I guess it's not there. Good to go. And now we put our plugs in. I'll tell you what, before we put these plugs in here, let's talk a little bit about spark plugs and plug wires. You'll notice that right down in there is the metal round ring. I don't know if you can see that very well. Let me zoom in here. Down in that hole, you can see the metal round ring. Darn. Come on, baby. There it is, way down there at the bottom. The metal round ring that holds the top of the spark plug in. And it holds it like this once you get it down into the motor. Now, what happens over time, I don't know if you've ever tried to pull one of these things off after it's been put on there and the spark plug is in the engine, but sometimes it just doesn't want to come off. And you're sitting there wondering, what in the heck is going on? What happens is sometimes people buy cheap spark plug wires and the heat of the ceramic on the plug actually melts the inside of the boot. And this is called the plug boot, the rubber boot, and it actually fuses to the spark plug. So here you are trying to pull it off, and it won't come off. So you grab a hold of the wire and pull, and the wire comes off, but the boot stays on. Well, what do you do about that? Well, what happened was, usually when that happens, unless there's some kind of special racing wire or something that's designed not to come off, unless you have a special tool or something, they don't want the plug wires coming off while the car's doing 140 miles an hour around the track, or 200 miles an hour or whatever. What we have to do is we have to treat the inside of the boot with dielectric grease. Now that doesn't mean you get up to where that metal piece is that the tip of the plug goes into. No, you don't want to do that. You want to get inside the boot down in this area here. You can even put just a little bit, a thin coat of it on the ceramic. And that accomplishes a couple of things. It keeps the boot from fusing with the ceramic. And it also insulates the tip of the spark plug from the bottom. Because what can happen is once you get that thing screwed into the block, if you don't have good insulation between the tip and the bottom, you get a spark jump. It'll just jump right to there, right underneath the boot, right to the metal on the bottom of the spark plug, and out into the engine block. What's happening there? Well, you're getting a short. You know, the tip of these spark plugs, you know, you get what, 20, 25,000 volts coming into that baby. It doesn't take much to jump from here to here and then out into your engine. It may not jump into the inside of the cylinder where this thing is sitting, but it could jump from here, an arc right across to your engine, right across. And sometimes you'll get an arc, it'll only arc from here to here. You'll get burnt arc marks around the base of the top of this bolt type head right here. You'll get burn marks there. So use your dielectric grease. I'll show you how to do that. I'll show you how to do that on one of the old wires. Okay, and then when it comes time to put the new wires on, it'll all be done, ready to go. I can just pop them in. Now once again, we're going to go back to our 100% pure silicone grease, and this is what we're going to use. It is dielectric. It is dielectric. Matter of fact, they even give me instructions on the back on how to apply it. It says here you can use this on the back of brake pads. After shims are installed, you can apply it to your caliper parts on your brakes, and also ignition. It says apply to spark plug boot and ceramic part of the plug. This is a dielectric grease, okay? And dielectric means that it is an insulator, which prevents sparks from going from the top of the plug down to the bottom of the plug and then out to the block. Alright, piece of cake. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some grease on this Q-tip. Let me get it on there. Trying to come up with a place to hold this plug boot to show you how this is done can be a little difficult. Anyway, I've got my grease on the end of my Q-tip. You don't need 50 pounds of it. And remember, you don't want to get it all the way up there to where that metal is, where the top of the spark plug plugs in. You just want to get down around the base and just kind of smear it around, nice thin coat. Hold it with one hand while you smear it around with the other, okay? The same thing applies where the boot is. You can put a thin coat on the ceramic if you want, like so. Just take a little bit off your tube, smear it around there, and that's all there is to it, okay? All the way around. Yes, it takes time for this stuff. It takes time, but you know, if you want to, working on a car to me is like working on radios or whatever. It's very relaxing. You know, I don't care how much time it takes. I don't care, believe it or not, if it takes another month to get this engine going. It doesn't bother me. You know, it bothers Brendan to no end. And I know it's bothering a bunch of you. But the enjoyment of doing it and getting it ready and taking my time, that's where it's at for me. Once the engine starts, if it starts running fine, well, you know, it's sort of the anticlimactic moment for me, okay? One more thing I need to tell you. Yes, we're dragging this on because it's stuff you might need to know. You may never use it. And then again, 2 years from now you may use it, or 2 hours from now. Never know. This is called anti-seize lubricant. This is an older brand, Fel-Pro, been around a long time. It has no seizing. You put it around the threads, a very thin. You clean the threads of your plug really, really good. Use wire brush to clean them out. And then put your anti-seize compound on the threads and make sure to get all the way down to the bottom. Not a ton again, just a coating, all right? You're supposed to, anytime you use it with threaded items, you're supposed to put the anti-seize compound on both sets of threads before you screw it together. Well, you can't hardly do that with spark plugs. I mean, especially the ones in the back. I mean, how do you get back there and know that you did it right? Now, not all spark plugs require anti-seize compound. Keep that in mind. I'll repeat that. Not all spark plugs, especially the newer models, the chrome-plated types, the really shiny kind that you can, you know, this is all chrome-plated all the way from here to here. You can comb your hair in it. They do not require anti-seize compound. As a matter of fact, if you put anti-seize compound on those, you're going to screw them up, because when it comes time to torque the plug into the engine, which is what you're supposed to do, the anti-seize compound with that real shiny chrome and everything that is designed not to have the anti-seize compound, you could over torque the plug, possibly break the bottom of the plug off in the head, and now you really got a problem, you know. So make sure that if now this type is no problem here. You can go ahead and use your anti-seize compound with these. But the newer types are really shiny ones. If you're unsure, find out. All right, just ask the guy at the automotive parts store, who probably won't have any idea what you're talking about. But anyway, just keep in mind that not all spark plugs can use anti-seize compound. Now I'm going to open this up and let you see what it looks like. The newer stuff, you know, is Permatex type, is a kind of a grayish material. The old Fel-Pro, I don't even know where I got this at here. It's the old Fel-Pro. It comes under the name Pro Line. All right, I don't even know where I got this stupid thing at. But I'm going to put a little thin layer around after, you know, I have cleaned all of the threads. I'm going to clean them a little bit more with a wire brush. Then I'm going to turn them in by hand, and then we're going to tighten them down with a torque wrench. Now that's what the anti-seize compound looks like of old. It was kind of a coppery color, grease-like looking stuff. The new modern stuff is silver. Keep that in mind. If you know, it's not going to look like this. Well, we didn't get it started once again, guys, but you know, we are right on the cusp. I've got all the plugs in. Tomorrow we'll hook up the plug wires. I've already checked the firing order, the way it's set up to the distributor cap. It's all good. All I got to do is substitute wire for wire, piece of cake. So tomorrow we'll get the plugs, you know, and get that dielectric grease put up in there, and get them hooked up to there, and that'll be, you know, put our gas tank in, of course, put a little gas, squirt some gas in the carburetor, hit the switch, we ought to be good to go. I was kind of hoping to get it done today, but there's a storm brewing. You can hear the wind blowing. It's fixing to come down on us here, so I'm going to get out of the carport. Meanwhile, I've got the battery disconnected. You know, when you have a car like this, you don't know if underneath the dash of this thing there's 5 or 6 shorts going on. You leave your battery hooked up, and it just drains your battery down to nothing. You come out the next day and it's dead. So disconnect it until you find out for sure. And one more thing I'll leave you. That thing right there is a vacuum reservoir can, or a vacuum reservoir they call it, and primarily for use with the vacuum assist brakes, power brakes. And all that thing is an old tomato juice can painted black. That's what they used. And you know, there's guys on eBay trying to get $100 for one of those. Are you kidding me? No, I don't think so. Anyway, until next time, this is John.